Welcome back to Security Cleared Jobs, Who's Hiring and How. In celebration of Military Appreciation Month this May, today's episode features a conversation from ClearedJobs.Net's Military Monday webinar series. Thank you for your service and enjoy the show.
My name is Bob Wheeler, and we're going to be talking about compensation. With me today from ClearedJobs.Net is Sara McMurrough. She's going to be helping us out today, and we're going to be talking to Mr. Jonathan Everhardt. He is the Talent Acquisition Manager from SOSi. First of all, Sara, do you want to say hello really quickly, and then we'll let Jonathan introduce himself?
Sure. Yes. So hi, everyone. I'm Sara McMurrough. I've been here for about 8-9 years now. And, having been in the National Guard myself, but also being a military spouse, I kind of have an understanding from the military side, as well as having been a recruiter, hearing a lot of these questions that Jonathan's going to be touching on. So I'm excited to share the information.
Jonathan, you want to say hello to everybody? Give us some information about your background and where you come from?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Jonathan Everhardt. I am a talent acquisition manager with SOSi, SOS International. We are a family-owned government contractor. Basically, I transitioned here out of the Marine Corps in 2017. I retired and moved directly into here to SOSi to become a recruiter. And then at which point, after a few years, I eventually moved over to take over my own team. And I'm currently leading the technology and engineering business unit recruiting for the business here. Again, pleasure to be here. And thanks for the introduction.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about compensation because like we said, I was in the Navy for 20 years. Jonathan was in the Marine Corps. Sara, National Guard, her husband's in the Army. We know when you're getting out that there's a lot of things out there. And maybe you understand the basics of like compensation is more than just your pay and stuff like that. But it really is. It's not only one of the hardest things to figure out, but a lot of times as a veteran, you don't even know, who to ask the questions to. So we're going to try to answer some questions today that tend to be on the minds of those veterans. And I know we kind of got these topics because Jonathan talked to some of the veterans there at SOSi to kind of say, hey, what were your concerns when you were getting out? So we're going to start off first with Jonathan. You said you retired from the Marine Corps. One of the big questions folks have is like, hey, if I got a Marine military pension, how does that affect my pay in the other side?
Very good question, because that's something that I went through myself. I had my own military pension, and I think my feedback here should be that it should not affect your salary whatsoever. Your military pension, much like any military disability that you have, is something that was earned or that you received from your experience while in the military, while your salary on the civilian side, on the corporate side, is specific to the position that you are interviewing and seeking, employment for. So that position's salary should be based off of your education, experience, and skills. And there should be no other factors that go into that. Basically, service members sometimes worry that they're going to end up being lowballed or that they're not going to get the salary for, what they're most qualified for. And what I'm here to say is it should not be that way. It should be strictly based off of what you bring to the table with the current company that you're interviewing for.
Sara, one of the things we talked about was also besides just the pension part, but there's benefits that come with it and healthcare, those kind of things. So what were the questions that some of the veterans had about like TRICARE and healthcare and how that's going to affect things, Sara?
Right. That's something that, is probably one of the most common questions that I've heard, even in my recruiting experience as well, is, well, I'm coming from the military. I have retired. I have TRICARE. I don't need the company benefits. So can I get a higher pay when I get hired with this company because I don't need the medical? I think that's a really common question. And I'd love to hear your feedback on that, Jonathan, and what your recruiters and you have been telling the candidates that you talk with.
That was one of the questions I had when I did my first salary negotiation here at SOSi. I do not need benefits. I have TRICARE. My family, we're all taken care of. And what I quickly learned was that salary and benefits come from two different pots of money usually. And so along these lines, I would definitely encourage these questions to be had with your recruiters as you're interviewing for positions. I would try and talk about this as early on in the process as possible. As I mentioned, what I learned was that the benefits comes from a different pot of money, and normally they're not willing to pay you extra, so to speak, but it doesn't hurt you from asking for more money in your salary, sort of to counter that. So don't hesitate to ask for a little bit more in salary and see what they say.
You don't know what you don't know. So is there a right time or a wrong time to start asking those kinds of questions when you're engaged with a recruiter?
Yes, absolutely. I think so. I think as early on as possible. So when you are going through the screening process with your recruiter, where there, that initial phone call, that initial conversation where you're talking about the qualifications of the position, it doesn't hurt to ask the recruiter the question what the salary is for the position, and then go from there. The reason why I feel you want to get that out of the way, and just so everyone is also aware, I feel that the recruiters want to get that out of the way also, just in case you end up finding out that you are too far apart in compensation, whether it's salary, total compensation, what have you. If you're too far apart, it's better to have these conversations up front before you go too far along into the process and find out that the position's just not going to work out. So I would get those questions out of the way as quickly as possible.
Very good. Very good. Other things we're ClearedJobs.Net. People use their clearances here. If I have a better clearance than what you're looking for, do I get more money because I've got a higher clearance than what you're asking for? Those types of things, or is it just strictly tied down to what the job description says?
When you're interviewing for a specific position, there is a salary that is aligned to that specific position. And then also keep in mind that that salary is going to be aligned to the requirements that are on that job description. So again, it doesn't hurt to ask, but you'll know, and the recruiter should be able to let you know whether they have any room to go up. The reason why it may not be a bad idea to ask is there may be some professional development or some career development that you may be able to do. For example, if you're interviewing for a position on a government contract that has other positions within the contract that may require a higher level of security clearance, then that may be good to know, and it may give you more to bring to the table to the company if they look at you and they consider you for that. So again, this is, I think, all within the conversations that you'll have. And if you haven't figured it out, when I was recruiting and talking to candidates, my screening calls would be rather lengthy. They would be 30, 45 minutes, because I would make sure that we got all of these questions out of the way and that we knew exactly what each other were looking for when we move ahead and move forward in the hiring process.
One of the LinkedIn users out there wanted to say if you could please speak to your experience relating to negotiating annual leave. And actually, our topic was basically paid time off and federal holidays. So let's just kind of wrap all those things in there together. I mean, Jonathan, I almost called you Gunny there. You remember the days of annual leave and 30 days a year and 96 is for every holiday. What's the difference on the outside? And also, can you negotiate those things? Can you get more? Can you get less? Like, what's the differences and how does it work?
This was all a new concept to me. I did not know what was something that could be negotiated. I didn't know, that, for example, that the weekends they don't count as PTO. If you're not supposed to be working, you don't have to count that as time off. Whereas in the military, if you take a 10-day vacation, you're counting that Saturday and Sunday as a leave day. That right there off the get-go is one of the big differences. Is you're only using PTO for time that you would actually be working. And then how it works basically is here at SOSi, all of our new employees start off at an accrual rate of 16 days per year is how many PTO days you earn per year. And that's a little over 3 weeks, 3 work weeks is what that translates to. And then as you stay at the company and earn yourself tenure within the company, once you've been with SOSi for 3 years, that rate increases. And then again, if you've been here for 7 years, which I just crossed that 7-year barrier this past July, that rate increases again. So for us here at SOSi, we have 3 different levels. Now, negotiating PTO is probably easier said than done. You just need to know that they're just not going to do that for anyone. For some companies, it may be a little bit different. Here at SOSi, we do require leadership approval for that. So that's, the recruiter's not going to be the one who makes that decision for you, whether you can negotiate more PTO or a higher PTO accrual rate. So it is something that can be done. I do see it from time to time. And what I would add in is the company might be a little bit more flexible to grant that approval for a position where it's a little bit more of a tougher position to fill, maybe more of a more technical type of background where they don't want to lose the candidate, and then maybe they don't have anyone else that they can come back to right away, and it might have to open up the recruiting cycle all over again. So I would say it is something that can be negotiated. It is not. It may not be so quick to do it and give it to you, but it can be done. So again, it just gets back to that initial comment. Bring it up, talk to the recruiter, and figure out what you can and can't do while you're in your communication with the recruiters.
And is that separate from the federal holidays, right? So you have X number of federal holidays that SOSi has on the calendar. So your employees get off so many federal holidays, plus they accrue PTO at whatever rate it is, correct?
Yes, Sarah, that's correct. So we have 10 paid federal government holidays throughout the year. And how we do it is 8 of our days are paid regular holidays. You get them off no matter what. We also get 2 floating holidays that the individual employee can choose to use. So there are 4 options throughout the year, and you get to pick 2 that you can use. That will give you up to your 10 federal holidays throughout the year. For example, Columbus Day is coming up. That's a floating holiday for us, along with the day after Thanksgiving. Not necessarily a quote unquote holiday, but it's a holiday that people like to kind of not go to work on. So
Black Friday for myself.
yeah, definitely. So you do have that to consider. And then, yes, to your point, your PTO days, you're only, if you take a week of PTO and there's a federal holiday in there, say that Monday, you're only taking time off for those 4 remaining days for the rest of the week. So the federal holidays do not count towards your PTO accrual or your usage for time off.
Yeah. I mean, the good news is they're not going to call you in for duty on Christmas. Typically, the bad news is you're not going to realize just how many days off you had in the military until you get out and you don't have all those 4-day weekends and stuff like that. So,
right. The surprise long weekends. Hey, I'm off on Friday, or you go to PT and they send you home. Those types of things, not too common on the outside.
Hey, relocation. A lot of people will say, look, I'm getting out of the Navy or the Marine Corps, whatever, Army. I've got a free move. So some people have got that in their pocket, but also some companies offer relocation. What is relocation? How does it work as far as the initial compensation plan? And is it also negotiable type thing?
For this, I would like to say it's really a case-by-case scenario here. Mm-hmm. It's good to know especially if you're on the phone with the recruiter for a position that is not where you are presently located, you'll want to ask these questions for sure. Oftentimes, the relocation assistance will be available, but companies may not let you know about that because that's an expense that they just kind of assume that they would rather save because it's all about making money and saving money on the civilian side. So definitely ask the recruiter those questions if that is available, and the recruiter will probably let you know regardless, because again, with the salary piece of it, we'd rather get these questions answered up front so that we don't go too far along, get you an offer extended, and then find out, you've got a family of 4 and 2 cars and what have you, and all this stuff that you want to move. So it's going to be position specific. Some government contracts do not include a stipulation for relocation. Now, if the position is a position that's overseas, here at SOSi, we have a lot of work overseas, whether it's Europe, the Indo-PACOM region, Japan, Korea, or even in the Middle East. Oftentimes, the relocation will be considered or covered, if you will. But then at that point, you just get into the what's covered and what's not covered. Typically, we'll fly you out there for sure. And again, every contract is going to be different with what they cover and what they don't cover. Storage of household goods or movement, shipping of household goods will vary from position to position. But then also, if you've got a vehicle that you've got to move, pack up, also lodging, temporary lodging, where you're going to, you may not have a place to live right away. So these are all things that do get covered within relocation typically, but sometimes they don't. So it's important to ask those questions. And then the other thing that you need to consider also is, how is it covered? Is it covered up front? Is it, fully covered where the employee or the candidate doesn't have to fork out any costs? Or is it something where they have to pay for it up front and then they get that expensed and reimbursed back to them upon, receipts and whatnot? So I've seen it both ways, and it's important to make sure you know that before jumping too far in, so that you can make the sound decision on whether the position is right for you.
And so if someone is a transitioning service member and they have that one last move, should they ask if they can have, that increased salary because they don't require relocation? Is that, a question that you've heard? Is it, it just came to me, because we talked the same kind of thing in the healthcare.
I think it just goes back to the point that I feel that salaries are usually in, so to speak, a different pot of money than some of these other expenses. And the company may be able to come up with your relocation assistance through some other avenue or some other means of the budget to cover those expenses. So it may not really make a difference, is what I'm saying, if you do ask for the salary increase, but it doesn't hurt to ask. Where I see where it may make a difference is if you do have to come up with these costs up front and then you get it reimbursed to you and after you start, then in that situation, I have seen where they will be open to increase your salary a little bit to sort of compensate for that fact that you have to come up with the expenses ahead of time, or maybe offer you a one-time sign-on bonus or something like that to sort of counter the fact that you have to come up with those relocation expenses up front. Right. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, when you keep talking about negotiating and stuff like that, I would remind our transitioning veteran job seekers, it's really going to depend on how in demand your skills are, because you're negotiating a hand, and if you've got the kind of skill set and the kind of clearance that they're really having a hard time finding, they're going to do more. But if you're one of 10 people that could do the job, and Jonathan's already talking to those 10 people, you don't have as strong a hand to play to negotiate this benefit or that benefit, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Again, the business is going to consider all factors when they want to extend something out that's going to be another, an added cost, so to speak. So it's always good to know, what your background is, and the recruiter will probably give you a little bit of insight also if you may get a clue that you're the only one interviewing for a position just through a regular casual conversation with the recruiter, or, you may find out that there's 3 or 4 other candidates that have also interviewed for the position, and it's pretty competitive. So just some things to keep in mind.
Yeah. Engage your recruiter when you're talking to somebody. If they're interested in you for your skill set, ask questions, because Jonathan will tell you it's your job to put the person there. You're working for the company, but also to make sure everything goes smoothly. So you would much rather have questions than find out stuff later on, right?
Right. And, I like to say this was all new to me when I went through this experience. My previous job that I had before the Marine Corps was in 1995 at a Long John Silver's. There are very few of those that are even in existence these days. And the whole transition process was brand new to me, didn't have a clue what I was doing. And, you only know what you know. And so, things like this that we're doing are great to be able to offer, some ideas and things to talk about so that you can go in and make your transition as smooth as possible. The company wants you to stick around too. We don't want you to kind of get seated and start and then realize that something isn't right and, this isn't the right opportunity for me, and then quickly go to move on. We want to make sure that you're going to be there for the long term. So we're going to try and, help you out and allow for a smooth transition as best as we can.
Sarah, did we miss anything?
I don't think so, but I have to say, being a military spouse that will be going through this process with my husband here in the next couple of years, I love having those conversations because I learned so much. I mean, there are things that I knew before, but it continues to grow. The questions, some of the ones that your team, Jonathan, that they brought up weren't things that I had thought of. So, I hope that the people who are listening and the people who will listen to this later learn something. And, if you have more questions, as time goes on, because they will, can they find you somewhere, Jonathan? Is it okay to have people reach out to you and your team and just ask questions?
Yes, absolutely it is. We're all on LinkedIn. We get messages daily from service members. ClearedJobs is another one. We all have our own accounts through that. The recruiters on our team, we've been through this. A couple of retirees on my team, so they've gone through that transition also. And so definitely open to be able to give that feedback and just be able to try and help somebody out. Even if it's one person, that's one person that, got their questions answered.
Yeah. Jonathan, we appreciate so much getting your guys' feedback. You at SOSi, terrific organization, and job seekers out there. These recruiters really work hard, and especially if they were veterans themselves, they want to help you. They really, really do. So engage them, ask them questions. But I can't thank you enough for your time today, Jonathan. Well, thank you so very much.
All right, thanks.
Take
Bye.
care.